Hi, everybody. Welcome to Talking Creativity in American Culture. This is a series of interviews in support of a class with a similar name that I teach at University of Alabama. Today we're talking with Lawrence Jackson. He's an associate professor, director of graduate studies, and an associate chair of dance at UA. He's performed all over the world, created tons of amazing choreographic works. His research surrounding black dance has been published in many scholarly journals, and I'm excited to have him join us today. So without further ado, Lawrence Jackson. Hi, Lawrence.
Hi, Mark.
First question.
I'm ready.
You have a BFA from University of Southern Mississippi and an MFA from Florida State. Danced with Cleo Parker Robinson Dance Ensemble for a number of years. You studied with Donald McHale, which blows my mind. Mary Hinkson choreographed over 85 original works. Now you're an associate professor and director of graduate studies and associate chair of dance at the University of Alabama. You seem extremely young to have accomplished all of those things from a creative standpoint. Can you just talk about momentum and gaining traction?
Sure. I reflect back on all of my accomplishments, and I think about, people who I've admired throughout my career and people that I've trained with and studying their backgrounds and their career paths. And I try to model my career after those people. That drive to see myself where I want my career to be keeps me motivated. I'm just enjoying where I am now and learning from the experiences that I'm having, learning how to mature and grow as an artist while maturing and growing as a scholar and an academician, and just enjoying the ride.
I love that. All right, so your focus is obviously on the world of dance. But did you ever consider doing anything else as a kid? Did you want to be a veterinarian or a chef or something like that?
Yeah. Well, no, none of those things, but But I did want to be involved in politics. I wanted to be a lawyer for a while. That's really where I concentrate my energy on, because I love reading about politics and history. Until I discovered that I could have a career in dance and that was a real possibility, I was majoring in political science. But I find intersections between my interest in politics and history and even anthropology in the work that I do artistically.
Are your dances politically driven? The choreography you make?
Across the spectrum of my work, I haven't done a lot of political works. Now, I'm naturally an introvert, so I created a lot of works that I'm not allowed to be seen publicly. I do a lot of like journaling, and then from that journaling, I derive movement, and from that movement, I derive choreography. Like right now, I'm actually beginning to create a work that's centered around the Black Lives Matter movement. So I have a lot of like work that I'm pulling from my video archives that I created 5, 10, 15 years ago. And I'm going back and looking at that thinking, oh yeah, that's a nice chunk of material right there that I want to go back and reinvest in.
So I've got a list of 20 questions. I'm going to roll a 20-sided dice. We'll ask 5 of those 20 questions. Question number 1, we got a 9. What are your rituals for harnessing creativity? Is your process structured or flexible, and why?
I kind of harness creativity in a plethora of ways. I guess as mentioned earlier, I think creativity starts out with some sense of inspiration. I'm an avid journal writer, both where I write about my personal life. I have a professional journal where I write about my professional life. I have another journal where I write about my spiritual life. And so all of those serve as like tools for me to create things, something. It may not be that I'm trying to create a narrative work about my thoughts on this particular subject matter, but those thoughts could arouse emotions within me. And those emotions then arouse movement out of me. And then I take that movement and then we begin to develop movement phrases that are centered around the essence of what that emotion is. And that's like one way that my primary way that I typically work, which is why I write so much, because I have a huge library of like material to just reference whenever I'm trying to figure out what my next work is going to be about. In terms of like the process and like, do I remain flexible in it? Of course, I believe like whenever you enter a process, you have to remain flexible because I think in the beginning of the creative process, you have an idea, and then the end of the process, you have a product. But in the middle of it is where all of the education comes. You have to remain flexible to not like having some prescribed way to do something. Between the beginning and the end of it, you have to maintain a sense of awareness to know when you need to shift and when you need to not. And I think that that's for me is kind of like where my flexibility lies. Like I have a structure, but within that structure, there's like some organized chaos that happens that then hopefully creates a product.
Okay, rolling the dice. Here we go. 4, define culture in 10 words or less.
Yeesh. Okay. All right. Culture, traditions, values, beliefs, lifestyle, attitudes, customs. I know I didn't make 10. Is that like at least halfway?
You don't have to use 10. It's 10 words or less.
Yeah. I'm gonna lean on the or less part, on the
Okay.
or less side.
All right, I just rolled. I got a 13.
Okay.
Who are some significant arbiters of American culture currently?
I think some of those people are Beyonce, for sure. I'm going to give away everybody that I listen to. Jay-Z. Uh, but I think about, what they're doing with their art form and also what they're doing socially and politically. Like they have influence beyond, their music, but they also have influence in fashion and policy and those kinds of things. I think Michelle Obama, Oprah Winfrey, LeBron James, obviously Donald Trump, Mitch McConnell, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer. And I'm also trying to list people without like breaking my facial expressions and trying to remember.
All right, how many questions was that? That's 3 questions. We have 2 more. Oh, number 12. Is there someone else's process that you're jealous of, been influenced by, or wish that you could replicate yourself?
Yeah. So the person is Jawale Willa Joe Zoller, who is the artistic director of Urban Bush Women, which is all-female Black dance company out of Brooklyn, New York. She also is on the dance faculty at Florida State University. So she was actually one of my mentors and one of my professors when I went through the graduate program there. Her process, one of the things that she does is she makes these socio-political statements choreographically in a way that I have always wanted to figure out. Her process is some of her process, because she has a multiplicity of processes. So I took a choreography class that she taught, and she has a way of getting her dancers to do research and then develop their own opinions about the subject matter that she's exploring choreographically. And then she does a whole subset of choreographic exercises that makes you, as a dancer within her work, buy into the subject matter, even if you don't agree with the place that she's taking it. And so then you automatically get an artistic buy-in from the dancers, and then the choreography kind of just spawns out of that. And
Here we go. We rolled the number 17.
Mm-hmm.
In class, we talk about culture coming from in 4 flavors. What are some positive and or negative implications of these categories? So this is sort of a critique on how we are defining culture in this class. We talk about personal identity, collective identity, and enrichment activity, a form of human expression.
Oh, I think there are positives, obviously, positive and negatives to each category. I think personal identity, I think what makes us who we are is our character, our experiences, our attitudes, our thoughts, our beliefs, our behavior. And I think that they're unique to each one of us. When people describe you, they describe your personality, which speaks to the uniqueness of your personality. I think that once people self-identify and to figure out what their personal identity is, it helps them to understand what their purpose in life is, how you're going to walk in your purpose. And once you're walking into your purpose, it brings you this optimal level of happiness as a human being. And so I think that, that's important to have and to understand who you are. And it relates to like the collective identity, I think, in the sense that, we're thrust in these groups based on what we might look like, or someone is putting you in a box because of your affiliations or things like that. But I think once we know who we are personally and we've identified who we are personally, we can decide if we want to remain in that group that we've been either put in voluntarily or not. And I also think that being part of a collective identity, it helps you to realize a lot of things about yourself. I think, you know, uh, when the collective has a set of values and things like that that are counter to yours, it helps you to figure out that maybe I don't necessarily belong to this particular group. And so, and then it goes back to you defining yourself personally. In terms of enrichment, I think all of these categories still rate back to like really defining who you are. And I think in enrichment activities, I think having those kinds of activities helps one to develop their personal aesthetics and their personal values. And then I think that all of those things harness themselves in creativity and expressing ourselves in creative modes and creative avenues.
I like the idea of it's almost a funnel back to that personal identity. And maybe there's a hierarchy to those identities.
Yeah, yeah. I think we are all fundamentally here to figure out our purpose, and recognizing our self identity helps us to find the need to live out that purpose.
You saw the list of all the questions. Were there any questions you were really hoping you would get?
Well, I really like the idea of defining creativity. I think that was the first question on there. And I was stumped with that one because it made me do a lot of introspection. And it's like, well, how do we actually define creativity? So that one was one that I hoped I would get because I spent a lot of time thinking about
It would be against the rules to allow you to answer the question.
it.
Are there any that you were dreading? Like, did you read any of them and go, oh, I don't want that question?
Yeah, there was one that was, I think, is there, the single most significant cultural influencer or something like that.
Oh, okay. Last question.
Mhm.
Something that you're reading, something you're watching, something you're listening to, one of those things, all three of those things.
I'm currently reading White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo. Well, I read the book several years ago, and I'm rereading it because I'm just interested. As I said earlier, I'm creating this work that's going to highlight my voice as it relates to the Black Lives Matter movement. And so I'm surrounding myself with a lot of material that puts me in multiple different perspectives and different hemispheres, so that as I'm entering this creative process, that I'm armed with multiple perspectives.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. This has been fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you. No, I've enjoyed it. It's definitely forced me to really think about do a lot of introspection. So thanks for the opportunity. Great.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yes, my pleasure. Thank you.